The room was cold, dark, and made of thick stone. Kalen's head hurt. He sat up slowly, blinking as his eyes adjusted to the dim light. A heavy iron door stood at one end of the room. The walls were bare. There was only a small bed of straw and a bucket in the corner. His heart sank. He was in a prison cell. His memory was fuzzy. He remembered the mission, something about checking a crashed signal on the outer edge of an alien planet. Then, gunfire. Bright flashes, a sharp pain. And now this. He sighed, rubbing his temples. Where am I? Then he heard it, a soft, shaky breath. He turned his head quickly. Someone else was in the cell. In the farthest corner, nearly hidden in the shadows, sat a girl, an alien woman. She was curled up tightly, her arms wrapped around her legs, head down. Her skin had a pale blue-purple tone that shimmered faintly under the light. Her ears were small and slightly pointed, like a delicate blend of human and elf. She looked young, maybe close to his age. Her clothes were torn and dusty, but her eyes, when they opened, were filled with pure fear. Kalen froze, not wanting to scare her. "Hey, it's okay," he said gently. "I'm not going to hurt you." She gasped and pressed herself tighter against the wall, her eyes wide and glassy. Her lips trembled. She muttered something in a language he didn't understand, her voice shaking. He raised his hand slowly to show he meant no harm. "I don't know where we are. I just woke up too. Are you okay?" She didn't reply. Her breathing was quick, like a cornered animal. She stared at him like he was a threat. Then she whispered something again, this time a word that sounded like devour. Kalen tilted his head. "Devour," he repeated, confused. The alien girl nodded quickly, her whole body trembling. She believed he was going to eat her. Kalen blinked. Then, understanding dawned on him. His heart sank. She was terrified of him, not just as a stranger, but as something worse. She must have been told terrible things about humans. No, he said softly, shaking his head. "I'm not a monster. I don't eat people. I promise." She didn't look convinced. Her eyes remained locked on him, watching his every move. He stayed on his side of the cell, not daring to get closer. He looked around and spotted a small dish of food near the door. It looked like some sort of dry rations. He gently slid it toward her. "Here," he said. "You can eat it. I won't touch it." The alien girl didn't move. She stared at the dish, then back at him, as if it were a trap. Kalen sat back against the wall, sighing. This is going to be a long day. Hours passed. Neither of them spoke. The silence between them was filled with tension. Kalen didn't move from his spot, hoping she would feel safe if he kept his distance. He drank a little water from the cup in the corner and ate only a few bites of his own ration. He kept stealing glances at her. She was still in the same position, though her breathing had slowed a little. He wondered what kind of place this was, and who had captured them. Suddenly, a loud clang came from outside the cell. Footsteps. A shadow passed by the small window in the door. Kalen held his breath. But the door didn't open. The footsteps moved away. He exhaled slowly. "Whoever locked us in here, they don't care if we're scared," he muttered to himself. To his surprise, the alien girl looked up at him. Just for a moment. Their eyes met. Then she looked away again. That small glance meant something. It was a start. Kalen smiled a little. "My name is Kalen," he said, pointing to himself. "Kalen." She didn't answer. Still, he tried again. "What's your name?" She opened her mouth slightly but closed it again. It seemed like she wanted to speak but didn't trust him yet. That was okay. He had time. He wouldn't force her. As he lay back on the cold floor, staring at the ceiling, one thought kept running through his mind. Who is she? And why does she fear me so much? But deep down, Kalen knew one thing for sure. This was no ordinary prisoner. The next morning, Kalen woke up to soft movement in the corner. He didn't open his eyes right away. He just listened. The alien girl was moving slowly, not toward him, but toward the food dish he had pushed across the cell the night before. He peeked from under his arm and saw her lean forward carefully, like a frightened animal. She picked up the food and sniffed it. Then, still watching Callan from the corner of her eye, she began to eat, tiny bites, quick and nervous. Callan smiled. It wasn't much, but it was progress. He sat up slowly and stretched, making sure to move gently so she wouldn't feel threatened. She paused, tense again, ready to run if needed. But he simply yawned and rubbed the back of his neck. "Morning," he said softly. She didn't respond, but at least she didn't flinch this time. Callan leaned back against the cold wall and studied her quietly. Her skin had a soft glow under the dim light, like polished stone. Her hair was a dark silver, messy and tied loosely with a strip of cloth. She was strange and beautiful in a way he didn't expect. "I don't know what they told you about humans," he said after a while, "but I'm not here to hurt anyone." The alien girl looked at him again, her eyes narrow and full of confusion. Then she pointed at him and said one shaky word: "Human." Callan nodded. "Yes, human. That's what I am." She repeated the word, unsure. "Who? Man." Then she pointed at herself. "Syra." Callan's eyebrows rose. "Syra, that's your name?" She nodded. He smiled gently. "Syra, that's a nice name." She looked away, unsure whether it was a compliment or a trick. There was still a wall of fear between them. Callan knew it wasn't going to disappear quickly, but at least now they had names. He tried drawing in the dust on the floor, a stick figure of himself with a smiley face, then a smaller figure with pointed ears. He pointed at the stick Callan. "Human," then pointed at the other drawing. "Syra." She watched him carefully. Then her lips moved. "Not safe." Callan blinked. "What do you mean?" She touched her chest, then pointed at him again. "You eat." His face fell. So it was true. Someone had told her that humans eat others, maybe as food, or maybe as some old myth. Callan shook his head quickly. "No eat. Not me. Never." Syra still didn't look sure. Her world had warned her. Her body believed the fear. He picked up his food ration and took a bite, chewing slowly. Then he slid it over to her. "See, I eat this. Not you." Syra looked at the packet, then at him, her brows furrowed. Slowly, she picked it up, looked it over, then placed it between them on the floor. She wasn't ready to believe, but she was starting to think. The silence grew again, but this time it wasn't heavy or frightening. It was calm. A loud clang echoed from down the hall. The heavy door rattled. Both Callan and Sarah jumped. Metal footsteps passed by outside. A voice shouted something harsh in an alien tongue. Callan didn't understand the words, but the tone was clear, angry, threatening. Syra covered her ears and curled up again, afraid. Callan felt anger stir inside him, not toward her, but toward whoever had locked them in here. She was just scared, just like him. And whatever place this was, it wanted to keep them apart, keep them afraid. He moved a little closer, but still kept space between them. "Syra," he said gently, "I don't want to hurt you. I want to get out of here. Maybe we can help each other." She opened her eyes slowly. "Help each other?" Callan nodded. "Yes, together." She sat up, still hugging her knees, but she no longer looked ready to run. Her head tilted slightly as if thinking about his words. He took a small, flat rock and scratched a rough drawing on the floor. A door, a tunnel, two stick figures running. Then he circled the two figures and pointed back and forth between them. Callan, Syra, escape. Syra stared at the drawing for a long time. Then finally, she reached out and touched the figure labeled with her name. That simple gesture made Kalen's heart lift. She wasn't saying yes yet, but she was listening. And that was enough for now. As the strange light of the alien sky leaked through the high vents, Kalen leaned back and let out a long breath. They were still trapped. They were still afraid. But now, there was hope. Kalen sat against the cold wall, his arms resting on his knees. Days had passed since he first woke up in this strange prison. The same food was given every day, dry, tasteless, and just enough to keep them alive. The only change was Syra. She wasn't hiding in the corner anymore. Though she still kept her distance, Syra had stopped flinching every time he moved. She ate without fear now, sometimes even sitting quietly while he spoke. She never said much, but she listened. Kalen kept talking to her, telling stories about Earth. He spoke about blue oceans, tall cities, funny animals like penguins and kangaroos. He even told her about chocolate, describing it as the best thing ever made by humans. Syra didn't laugh, but she watched him with interest. Her eyes followed his hand when he drew pictures on the floor, and sometimes she would trace the drawings after he was done. One morning, as he finished telling a story about his little sister learning to ride a bicycle, Syra suddenly spoke. "Bicycle is food." Kalen blinked, then laughed. No, not food. It's a thing you ride. Like, he drew 2 circles and a stick figure on top. You sit on it and move your legs to make it go forward. Syra tilted her head. Human. Strange. He smiled. You're not wrong. She stared at the drawing again, then whispered, "Bicycle." It was the first time she had spoken a word from his language on her own. "That's right," he said softly. "Bicycle." Syra looked down at her hands, thinking. Then she asked, "Why? You talk to me." Kalen was surprised by the question. He thought for a moment, then answered honestly. "Because you're not my enemy. You're scared. And you're alone. So am I talking else." Syra stared at him, her expression unreadable. Humans never talk, only take. He frowned. That's not all humans. Maybe the ones you met before were bad, but not everyone is like that. Syra didn't respond. She just sat quietly, thinking. Kalen didn't push. He leaned back and closed his eyes for a moment, listening to the soft humming sound in the walls. Maybe machines or power lines behind the stone. Everything in this place felt old, hidden, and wrong. Later that day, the door opened with a loud click. A large alien guard entered, wearing a black uniform and carrying a strange weapon. He tossed 2 food trays on the floor and stared at both prisoners without saying a word. Syra froze. Kalen could see her shoulders tense. The guard gave Kalen a hard look, then turned and left, slamming the door behind him. Syra didn't move. "Syra," Kalen said gently. She didn't answer. She was shaking. He moved slowly, picked up both trays, and placed one near her feet. Then he sat back down, giving her space. After a while, she whispered, "They want me gone." Kalen looked at her with concern. "What do you mean?" She hugged her knees tightly. "My people didn't come. I think they forgot me." "That's not your fault," Kalen said. "We don't know what's happening outside. Maybe they're trying to find you." She shook her head. "No, I broke the law. I helped someone they said was bad. They said I had human heart." Kalen raised an eyebrow. "That's a bad thing." Syra gave a weak smile. "To them, yes." He leaned forward. "Well, if having a human heart means being kind, then I'm glad you have one." For a moment, Syra's eyes softened. She looked at him, not with fear, but with curiosity, like she was starting to believe him. "You, not like others," she said. "Neither are you," he replied. That night, something changed. Syra sat beside him, not far, but close enough that their shoulders nearly touched. She spoke in a low voice, telling him about her home. a planet covered in glowing trees and floating mountains. Her people used songs to heal, and they could grow flowers with a touch. Callan listened in awe. That sounds beautiful. She nodded. It was. Before the war. He wanted to ask more, but he didn't. Instead, he just said, "Thank you for telling me." Syra gave a quiet nod. As they both rested on the cold stone floor, Syra whispered one last thing before falling asleep. "I'm not scared of you now." Callan smiled in the darkness. It wasn't freedom yet. They were still trapped. But now, they weren't trapped alone. Syra was not afraid anymore. She still didn't smile much, but she talked more now. Her voice was soft, and her words were sometimes slow, but each day, she grew more confident. Callan noticed the change and felt hopeful. They had been in the prison for more than a week. No one told them why. No one asked them questions. Every day, a guard would bring food and water. No one else came. No one explained anything. It was like they were forgotten. Callan sat cross-legged on the floor, drawing with a small piece of broken stone. "This is Earth," he said, sketching a circle. "Lots of water, blue sky, trees, cities." Syra watched him, resting her chin on her knees. "So far." He nodded. "Yeah, like years away, but I'd give anything to go back." She tilted her head. "What would you do if you go back?" Callan thought for a moment. "Visit my family. Hug my little sister. Eat real food. Sleep in a warm bed." Syra looked down. "I miss my sky," she whispered. "It's violet at night, with 3 moons." "That sounds amazing," he said. Then his tone changed. "Syra, we can't stay here forever." She looked up quickly. "You have plan." "Not a full one yet," Callan admitted, "but I've been watching. The guards come at the same time every day. One of them has a key around his belt. There's a control panel outside the cell. I think I can open the door, if I can reach it." Syra's eyes widened. "Escape?" He nodded. "Yes, together." She hesitated. "What if they catch us?" "They will separate us eventually," he said seriously. "They may send you to a different place, or worse. We don't know what they want. But if we don't try now, we may never get another chance." Syra looked down, her fingers twisting the edge of her sleeve. "I'm not strong like you." "You don't have to be strong," Callan said. "You just have to be brave." She didn't answer right away. Then she gave the smallest nod. "Okay, I try." That night, they made a plan. Callan would wait by the door during mealtime. When the guard opened it, Syra would create a distraction, pretending to fall or cry. That would pull the guard's attention. Then Callan would grab the key or try to slip out. It was risky, very risky, but they had no other choice. The next day, they were ready. Callan waited by the door, acting tired and weak. Syra sat near the wall, watching carefully. The guard came, same one as before. He opened the door and stepped in with the food tray. Syra suddenly let out a small cry and clutched her side, falling to the ground. The guard looked up. "What now?" He stepped toward her, frowning. At that moment, Callan moved fast. He rushed toward the door, but the guard turned just in time and pushed him back with a strong arm. Callan hit the wall hard and groaned. Syra gasped, truly frightened now. The guard stared at both of them, then spoke in a rough voice. "Try that again, and you'll be punished." He dropped the tray and slammed the door shut behind him. The sound echoed through the cell. Callan sat up slowly, rubbing his shoulder. Well, that didn't go as planned. Syra hurried over and helped him sit. Her hands were cold but gentle. "I'm sorry," she said. "Don't be," Callan replied. "You were great. We'll try again. We just need to be smarter next time." She looked at him, worry in her eyes. "What if they take you away?" Callan met her gaze. "Then I want you to escape, even without me." Syra shook her head quickly. "No, we go together." He smiled. All right. Together. Then. Later that night, as they sat close, sharing the last of the dry food, Scifi spoke in a soft voice. My people think humans are wild, dangerous. But you are kind. Callan looked at her. Maybe kindness is dangerous to those who don't understand it. She gave a small laugh, her first real laugh since they met. I was wrong about you, Callan, she said. I thought you would eat me. He chuckled. I still can't believe that, but I get it now. Scifi looked at him, serious again. You saved me. I will help you now. The promise hung in the air, quiet, but strong. In a place where fear ruled, they had found something rare. Trust. Tomorrow, they would try again. And next time, they would not fail. Callan couldn't sleep that night. His mind was busy with thoughts. Their first escape attempt had failed, but it wasn't over. Not yet. He knew the layout better now. He had seen the key more clearly. And most of all, Scifi was ready to help. She had changed so much in just a few days, from a frightened alien girl in the corner to someone who looked him in the eyes and said, we go together. That gave him strength. The next morning, they didn't speak much. The plan was clear. This time, Callan wouldn't try to grab the key. He'd try something smarter. Are you sure? Scifi asked, her voice low. Callan nodded. Yes, just do your part. They sat quietly as footsteps echoed outside the cell. The same guard arrived. The heavy door creaked open. His face showed no emotion. He stepped in, holding the same metal tray with food and water. Callan stayed still. He didn't rush like last time. Instead, Scifi stood up slowly and pretended to stumble. She fell hard and let out a cry, louder and more painful than before. The guard rolled his eyes. Again. He walked toward her. That's when Callan moved, but not toward the guard. He reached for the control panel near the inside of the door. It was a simple device, but he had noticed something before, a loose plate on the side. He pried it open with a sharp piece of rock he had hidden in his sleeve. Sparks flew. The guard turned around. Hey! But Scifi jumped up and threw the food tray at the guard's feet. It hit the ground with a loud crash. The guard stepped back in surprise. That was enough time. Callan crossed 2 wires and slammed his hand against the panel. A bright flash lit up the room. The lights blinked. Then the door slid open, completely. Now, Callan shouted. Scifi ran to his side, and together they bolted out of the cell into the hallway. Alarms began to blare. Red lights flashed. Voices shouted from distant corridors. Callan grabbed Scifi's hand and pulled her down the nearest hallway. This way. They ran past rows of other empty cells. Everything looked old, abandoned. It was a secret place, hidden and forgotten. But now, they were making noise, and the guards wouldn't stay confused for long. They turned a corner and saw 2 more guards running toward them. No choice, Callan muttered. He grabbed a loose pipe from the wall and swung it hard as the first guard raised his weapon. The blow knocked the weapon to the floor. Scifi moved fast, using a move she had learned during training back on her planet. She hit the second guard's leg, making him fall. They didn't stop. Down another hallway, then a flight of stairs. At last, they reached a door with a bright panel. It looked like an exit. Callan reached into the wiring again. His fingers worked fast, guided by instinct. Come on. Come on. Scifi stood behind him, watching both ends of the hallway. She could hear footsteps coming. More guards. More trouble. Then, click. The door hissed open. Sunlight. Real, warm sunlight poured into the corridor. They ran through it, shielding their eyes as they stepped outside. They were on a rocky hill. Strange purple trees grew nearby. The sky above was a deep orange color, with 2 suns shining. Birds flew overhead, their wings long and bright like silk. We did it, Scifi breathed. Callan smiled, his chest rising and falling with heavy breaths. "We're not safe yet, but we're out." Behind them, the door slammed shut. They had locked it from the outside. For now, they were free. Syra looked around. "Where do we go?" Kalen pointed toward the distant forest. "There, we hide first. Then we find help. Maybe we can reach your people, or mine." Syra hesitated. "My people may not want me back. I broke rules." "Then we make a new way," Kalen said. "Together." She looked at him, her eyes steady. Together. They started walking, their feet touching grass for the first time in days. And for the first time since this all began. Syra smiled. The forest was quiet, but not peaceful. The air was thick with a strange, almost electric feeling. Strange alien plants rustled in the breeze, and the ground beneath their feet seemed to hum. But Kalen and Syra didn't have time to enjoy the beauty around them. They had to keep moving. They walked for hours, leaving behind the prison and the chaos they had caused. The sounds of the alarms still echoed in Kalen's mind. He knew it wouldn't be long before the guards started searching for them. They couldn't stay in one place for too long. Kalen glanced over at Syra. Her face was tired, but there was a new strength in her eyes. As no longer the terrified girl he had met in the cell, she had grown, just like him. They had both been through so much. Now, they were free, but only just. "We should find shelter," Kalen said, his voice low. "We can't keep moving like this. We need to rest, or we'll wear ourselves out." Syra nodded. "I know a place. Not far. Safe." They turned and headed toward the edge of the forest, where the trees grew taller and the shadows deepened. It wasn't much, but it was enough. They found a small clearing, surrounded by thick bushes and tall grass. Syra led him to a small cave, hidden behind a curtain of vines. Inside, it was cool and dry. Kalen sank to the ground, grateful to finally rest. He looked at Syra. "This is good. We'll stay here for the night." Syra sat across from him, her body tense. She didn't speak right away, but her eyes were darting around, always alert. Kalen understood. They had both been prisoners for too long. Freedom was still new, and with it came a fear of being caught. "You should rest," he said gently, not wanting to push her too much. "We can figure things out in the morning." She nodded but didn't lie down. Instead, she looked at him with a serious expression. "Kalen," she began, her voice hesitant, "I need to tell you something." Kalen raised an eyebrow. "What is it?" Syra took a deep breath, then spoke softly, almost as if she was afraid of the words leaving her lips. "I don't think my people will help us." Kalen frowned. "What do you mean?" Syra's eyes grew distant. "I broke their laws. They think I betrayed them. They won't trust me anymore. Even if I find them, they won't help a human." Kalen's heart sank. "Syra, I don't care about your laws. You're not a criminal. You helped me because you're a good person. That's all that matters." She shook her head slowly. "But they don't see it that way." For a moment, they were both silent, lost in their own thoughts. Kalen wanted to tell her that everything would be okay, that they would find a way to make things right. But he couldn't promise that. The truth was, he didn't know what would happen next. "We'll figure it out," he said after a long pause. "Together, we'll find a way. Maybe we can go to my people. Maybe there's a chance they'll understand." Syra didn't answer right away. She just stared at the ground, her expression unreadable. Then softly, she said, "I've never met a human like you." Kalen blinked, surprised by the sudden shift in her tone. "What do you mean?" She looked up, her eyes meeting his. "You're different. Most humans, they're not kind. They hurt others. But you didn't hurt me. You didn't hurt anyone." Kalen felt a lump form in his throat. He had never thought of himself as someone special. He had just done what felt right. But hearing her say it, it made him realize something. Maybe kindness was more powerful than he had ever given it credit for. "I'm not perfect," he said quietly. But I'll always protect you. I promise. Syra's eyes softened. I believe you. They sat in silence for a while longer, both of them lost in their own thoughts. Kaelin wanted to keep talking, to make her feel better, but words felt empty in the face of everything they had been through. Still, the bond between them felt stronger than ever. Suddenly, a sound broke the silence, the rustling of leaves, the snap of a twig. Kaelin's eyes went wide. He reached for Syra, pulling her close. Get down, he whispered urgently. We're not alone. They crouched low, hiding behind the rocks and vines. The sounds of footsteps grew closer, and soon they could hear voices. Syra tensed. They're looking for us. Kaelin felt his heart race. There was no way they could outrun them. Not now. He had to think, and fast. He scanned the area quickly. The forest was thick, but they could hide. They just had to be careful. He turned to Syra, his voice barely above a whisper. We'll have to move fast. When they pass, we run. Syra nodded, her expression hardening. We won't let them catch us. The footsteps grew louder. Kaelin could hear the guards talking, their voices rough and angry. They were getting closer. Time was running out. Kaelin held his breath, waiting for the perfect moment. When the guards' voices were right above them, he grabbed Syra's hand and pulled her into the shadows. They moved as quietly as possible, darting between trees and hiding in the underbrush. Kaelin's heart pounded in his chest. They couldn't let the guards catch them. Not now. The forest was alive with sound. Birds chirped above, strange insects hummed in the bushes, and the wind whispered through the tall, alien trees. But none of those noises mattered to Kaelin and Syra. What mattered now was the soft crunch of leaves underfoot, the pounding of their hearts as they moved swiftly through the underbrush. The guards were close, too close. Kaelin pulled Syra to the ground as they ducked into a thicket of vines. He held his breath, his body pressed against the cool earth, listening intently. The voices of the guards filtered through the trees, sharp and angry, but they were moving in the opposite direction. Syra's breathing was quick and shallow beside him. Her hands shook slightly, but she didn't say a word. They both knew they couldn't make a sound. They had to wait. Minutes passed, feeling like hours. The rustling noises grew fainter, and slowly they began to relax. They're gone, Kaelin whispered after what felt like an eternity. He looked over at Syra, who still didn't speak. But her eyes were full of relief. We need to keep moving, he said, getting up and offering a hand to Syra. She took it, standing up carefully. They didn't waste any time. They had to get farther from the prison, farther from danger. They walked in silence, staying close to the shadows. Kaelin's mind was racing. They had escaped the prison, but the real challenge had only just begun. They had no plan, no clear destination, but they had each other, and that was something. After a while, they came to a small stream, its water flowing fast and clear. Kaelin knelt beside it, cupping his hands and drinking deeply. The cold water felt good, soothing the dryness in his throat. Syra sat beside him, her fingers brushing the surface of the water. How much farther? She asked softly, breaking the silence at last. Kaelin looked around. We'll keep going until we find a safe place. Then we can figure out what to do next. Syra nodded but didn't seem convinced. I don't know if there's anywhere safe. There has to be, Kaelin replied. We'll find it. Together. The words felt right, even though part of him wasn't sure. But he wouldn't give up. Not now. Not after everything they had been through. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, they set up camp in a small cave they found near the stream. The air was cooler now, but the cave offered shelter and some protection. It wasn't much, but it was all they had. Syra sat down against the wall of the cave, her arms wrapped around her knees. She looked out into the fading light, her expression distant. Syra, Kaelin asked, sitting next to her, what's on your mind? She turned to him, her eyes soft but serious. "Do you think I'll ever be able to go back to my people?" she asked. Callan felt a tightness in his chest. He wanted to tell her yes. He wanted to tell her they would figure everything out, that they would find a way to make things right. But he didn't know. He couldn't promise that. "I don't know," he said truthfully. "But I do know that you have a choice now. You don't have to go back if you don't want to. You're not a prisoner anymore. You're free." Syra looked at him, her eyes full of emotion. "I didn't feel free when I was with them. They wanted me to follow rules, but those rules didn't feel right." "You have a voice now," Callan said, his voice steady. "You can choose your own path, and I'll be there to help you, no matter what." She smiled softly, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Thank you." Callan smiled back. "You don't need to thank me. We're in this together. That's what matters." As the night settled around them, they lay down in the cave, the silence between them comfortable now. Callan felt the weight of the day's events begin to sink in. They were safe, for now, but they couldn't stop. They had to keep moving, keep searching for answers. He turned to Syra, who had her eyes closed, but was still awake. "Syra," he said quietly. She opened her eyes and looked at him. "I never thought I'd end up here," he said, his voice low. "In a place like this, with someone like you." Her gaze softened, and she leaned closer. "You're not like the others, Callan. I never thought a human could be kind." He reached out, touching her hand gently. "You're not so different from me, Syra. We both just want to survive, to be free." She squeezed his hand, and for a moment, the world outside the cave didn't matter. They were just two people finding their way in an uncertain world. The night passed quietly, but the road ahead was still long. The guards were still out there, and their freedom was far from guaranteed. But in that moment, as they lay together, Callan knew one thing for sure. Whatever happened next, he and Sarah were no longer strangers. They were a team, and nothing would tear them apart.